Ruki clutched the wooden counter as chaos erupted around him. In the cramped stall of Madame Kofo's Sundries, a storm was brewing. A tiny thundercloud zipped through the air, spitting out little bolts of lightning that made the hanging lantern flicker. Shelves rattled as a radio on the top shelf blared out, a frantic song about rain, as if summoning a storm of its own. On the floor, a pair of leather shoes tapped and danced wildly on their own, keeping pace with the radio's tune. A goat's panic bleating mixed with the squabbling voice of a yam shouting complaints. All the enchanted items in the hidden back room were awake and misbehaving at once, and Ruki was in the center of the storm. He ducked as the little thundercloud shot past, nearly grazing his ear with a spark. Outside in the bustling Balogun Market, a few curious faces peered toward the stall, drawn by the commotion. Ruki's heart pounded. If he didn't calm things down fast, the whole market would discover Madame Kofo's magical secret. That morning, Balogun Market bustled as usual by sunrise. Ruki opened Madame Kofo's Sundries, a tiny shop packed with everyday goods, wedged between a fabric stall and a shoe stall. As he swept the front, Madame Kofo sipped her morning tea and adjusted her headscarf. "Ruki, I'm stepping out for a bit. Please dust the back room while I'm gone," she said. Ruki nodded, though the back room, a small dusty storage closet, always gave him the creeps. As the morning rush died down, Ruki pushed aside the heavy curtain to the back room and coughed at the dust. While stacking some old boxes, his hand pressed a strange carved symbol on the wall. Click! A narrow door sprang open that he had never seen before. Heart pounding with curiosity, Ruki stepped through. To his astonishment, he found himself in a hidden room filled with shelves of very peculiar items. Jars of glowing liquids, bundles of dried herbs, and trinkets that hummed softly crowded the space. On one shelf, a carved wooden radio suddenly crackled to life, playing a cheerful tune that turned into a jingle predicting tomorrow's weather in song. Ruki's jaw dropped. On a table, a fresh piece of fufu sat on a plate, next to a bowl of egusi soup. Hungry, he pinched off a bit and ate it. Delicious. Yet, no matter how much he ate, the fufu never got any smaller. Startled, Ruki stepped back and nearly tripped over a pair of leather shoes on the floor. To his shock, the shoes stood up on their own and tapped impatiently. Remembering an old tale, Ruki blurted out a silly lie. "I can fly." Instantly, the shoes began dancing madly. He jumped away, realizing each object in this room was magical and alive. Just then, Madame Kofo returned and found Ruki in the secret room, eyes wide in wonder. Instead of scolding him, she smiled gently. "I see you've discovered my little secret," she said. "I may be an old woman, but I'm also a semi-retired witch." Ruki could hardly believe it. Madame Kofo explained that for years she had quietly helped special customers with magical merchandise, keeping it secret from the ordinary world. Now she was ready to teach Ruki. "These items have minds of their own," she warned kindly. "Treat them with respect, like people. I need your help to take care of them and our special customers." Though overwhelmed, Ruki agreed to learn. He had no idea what adventures were coming, but he nodded earnestly. "Yes, ma," he said. And so Ruki's apprenticeship in magic began. Over the next few days, special customers began to arrive quietly. The first was a frazzled banker who slipped into the store one sweltering afternoon. His shirt was wrinkled and his eyes were bleary. "Please," he begged, "the traffic in this Lagos is killing me. I have important meetings, but I'm exhausted. I need something to keep me awake." Remembering the magical stock, Ruki took him to the back room. From a shelf he retrieved a sleek metal thermos engraved with tiny symbols. "This is a never-ending coffee thermos," Ruki said softly. It will keep pouring hot coffee as long as you need. But please, use it sparingly." The banker agreed eagerly and exchanged a token fee. Clutching the thermos like a lifeline, the banker hurried out. Not even an hour later, as Ruki arranged goods at the front, he heard a commotion outside. The banker was back, or rather, he was zooming around the market lane, like a man with rockets in his shoes. Apparently, he couldn't resist overusing the magical thermos. He had drunk cup after cup, and now his eyes were wide, his body jittery with endless energy. He greeted random strangers enthusiastically, and even tried to help a surprised fruit seller arrange her oranges at lightning speed. Bystanders chuckled, and one trader hollered, "Ogre, reduce your coffee," making everyone roar with laughter. Ruki could only shrug sheepishly. From her stool at the front, Madame Kofo watched him zip by and hid a knowing smile behind her hand. The thermos worked a little too well. He made a note to always warn customers very firmly about moderation. A day later, a well-known politician's wife came by in disguise, hoping nobody noticed her. Dressed in a fine lace blouse and sunglasses, she leaned in and whispered, "I hear Madame Kofo sells special items. I need something to make sure my husband tells me no lies." In the secret backroom, Ruki presented an ornate bronze hand mirror. "Whoever holds this mirror will hear only the truth," he said. The woman's eyes gleamed as she traded a valuable pearl brooch for it. To test the mirror, she smiled and declared, "I am the most generous lady in Lagos." She clearly expected praise. Instead, the mirror spoke up in a sharp, nasal voice.
"If by generous you mean to yourself, then yes."
The politician's wife nearly dropped it. Stunned, flushing with embarrassment and anger, she demanded, "Has my husband been truthful to me?" The mirror replied bluntly,
"He was out with his secretary last night, not at a meeting."
That did it. The woman let out a scandalized cry. Ruki hurriedly caught the mirror as she thrust it back at him, her face livid. Without another word, she stormed out of the shop. Sighing, Ruki wrapped the chatty mirror tightly in cloth to silence it. Madame Kofo, peeking from the front of the shop, shook her head with a sympathetic cluck of the tongue. Some truths were hard to swallow. Perhaps it was best that particular item stayed in the shop. It had already caused enough drama for one day. Another day, a nervous university student came hoping for a magic fix to pass his exams. As Ruki searched the shelves, the student picked up a dusty bottle marked with a thunderbolt. Before Ruki could stop him, he pulled out the cork. With a pop, a tiny thundercloud burst forth. It was a small storm spirit crackling with lightning. The mini thunder god zoomed around, bellowing in a tinny voice, "Who dares wake me?" At once, rainwater gushed from the cloud creature, soaking the shop. A stray lightning zap shattered a light bulb, and both Ruki and the student yelped in terror. A couple of customers in front saw water flooding out from under the curtain and gasped. Outside, people shielded their heads, bewildered by a sudden drizzle coming from one stall on a clear day. Ruki's heart pounded. This was very bad. Thinking fast, he snatched a bowl of palm wine from a shelf, an offering Madame Kofo kept for such spirits. He held it up with both hands, speaking calmly despite his fear. "Great Cloud, please accept this offering and rest," he pleaded. The tiny thunder spirit paused, lightning flickering in curiosity. It sniffed the palm wine's sweet aroma and descended to drink. Seizing the chance, Ruki quickly raised the bottle and held it open beneath the little cloud. With a whoosh, the storm spirit was drawn back inside. Ruki jammed the cork in tight, just as Madame Kofo rushed in. The rain stopped immediately. The drenched student stammered an apology and fled, deciding that studying the old-fashioned way might be safer. Ruki and Madame Kofo hurried to dry the floor. Curious onlookers peered in, but seeing the commotion was over, they shrugged and went about their business. In Lagos, a brief mysterious rain was odd but not unbelievable, and soon it was forgotten. On another occasion, Ruki decided to test an old money-multiplying machine that sat gathering dust in the corner. A local trader had once asked about getting rich quick, so Ruki figured he should see how it worked. He flipped the switch on the rickety contraption, and it immediately began to whir and shake. For a moment, Ruki's heart leapt as crisp banknotes started shooting out of a slot. But his excitement turned to confusion when he picked one up. It was an old Biafran pound note, a currency long out of use. The machine spit out note after note of the worthless money and then rolled right off the shelf, clattering onto the floor and zooming toward the door like a wild toy. "Hey, stop!" Ruki yelled, chasing it. By then, dozens of the old notes had flown out into the market lane. Shoppers and traders caught the fluttering money, only to groan when they saw the obsolete notes. Laughter erupted all around as people realized it was a prank or malfunction. Ruki dashed after the runaway machine, dodging around a puzzled fish seller, and finally yanked its plug out from the socket. The machine shuddered to a halt, mercifully ending the shower of useless cash. Out of breath and embarrassed, Ruki apologized to the onlookers who were chuckling. At least that mishap didn't cause any real harm, except maybe to Ruki's pride. Not all problems came from customers. One quiet afternoon, Ruki heard a bizarre argument in the back room. He found, to his surprise, the talking yam and a small goat, another enchanted resident of the shop, in a heated squabble. The goat, which was tied to a post, was tugging toward the yam and drooling. "You better keep that goat away from me," the yam squeaked angrily. "I am not lunch, I'm a sacred yam." The goat bleated. "But you smell so good, just a little bite." Ruki burst out laughing, before quickly composing himself. He stepped in to play peacemaker. First he picked up the yam and placed it high on a shelf, well out of the goat's reach. Then he fed the goat a bunch of old vegetables from a bin to satisfy its hunger. "No eating magical yams, please," he scolded gently. Both goat and yam grumbled a bit, but the silly crisis was soon averted. Ruki shook his head, amazed that conflict resolution now involved livestock and produce. By now, Ruki had grown more confident in managing magical mishaps. But one evening, just as he was closing up, that confidence was put to the ultimate test. All at once, the enchanted items in the shop began to go haywire. Madam Kofo was out of the stall at that moment, so Ruki was alone to face the chaos. It started with a loud hiss from the never-ending coffee thermos on a shelf. Suddenly, its lid popped off, and a fountain of hot coffee gushed out. Ruki yelped and dodged the spray. At the same time, the wooden radio flicked on by itself, blasting a high-life song at top volume. Nearby, the enchanted fufu on its plate began to bubble and swell, almost spilling its soup. Across the room, the pair of leather shoes kicked out of their shoebox and began tapping furiously on the floor. The truth-telling mirror, wrapped in cloth, started yelling muffled truths. "Magic is real, this shop is enchanted," that threatened to reveal everything. On another shelf, the cork on the Thunder Spirit's bottle jiggled, the tiny storm inside growling to be let out. The money-multiplying machine sprang to life as well, spitting out a flurry of those useless Biafran pound notes, which fluttered out into the front of the shop. Even the goat started bleating in alarm, which made the yam on the high shelf start shouting complaints again. In seconds, chaos swallowed the tiny back room. Ruki stood in the center, eyes wide in panic. This was a full magical meltdown. Outside, a few people in the market were already stopping to stare at the strange scene. Snatches of loud music, flying old banknotes, and odd noises coming from Madame Kofo's stall. If someone walked in now, the secret would be out for sure. Ruki's heart thumped in his chest. He had to act fast. Ruki had no magic wand or spell to stop the chaos. Instead of panicking, he remembered Madame Kofo's advice. Treat them like people, with respect and care. Summoning every ounce of courage and calm he had left, Ruki spoke in a steady, pleading voice, hoping the unruly items would hear him over the din. "Please, everyone, calm down," he called out. "I know you're upset, but I'm here. I'm listening. I'm sorry if I haven't cared for you well. Let's all take it easy, please." His sincere tone started to work. The dancing shoes faltered, their frantic tapping slowing until they finally stilled. Ruki scooped them up and set them back in their box, whispering a thank you. The radio's blaring music tapered off on its own, as if deciding to listen. Ruki quickly flipped it off and nodded. He grabbed the thermos, burning his fingers a little, and managed to screw the cap back on tight. "Rest now, please," he murmured to it, wiping coffee off the shelf. The thermos gurgled and fell quiet. The mirror had been shouting, "There's magic here," from under its wrapping. Ruki gently lifted the cloth. "Hush now, mirror," he said. "I promise I'll polish your glass and let you speak later, but not another word right now, all right?" The mirror gave a final muffled harumph, and then was silent. Next, Ruki pulled the plug on the unruly money machine. It spat the last few notes, and then powered down with a clunk. "Thank you," Ruki said softly, as if calming a pet while hurriedly gathering up the scattered fake money. Above him, the cork on the Thunder Spirit's bottle was half loose, a wisp of dark cloud poking out. Tiny thunder rumbled from within. Ruki carefully took the bottle in his hands. "Easy there," he cooed. In a respectful tone, he continued. "Great Cloud, I haven't forgotten you. I promise I'll let you out for a little walk under the night sky later. But right now I need you to stay inside, please. We don't want to cause a scene, do we?" The little storm inside crackled indignantly, then slowly retreated back into the glass. The cork tightened itself with an annoyed humph. But the danger passed. Finally, Ruki turned to the goat and the yam. The goat was still trembling, and the yam still mumbling about doom. Ruki patted the goat's back to comfort it, and tossed it another piece of plantain. Then he looked up at the yam, and gave a reassuring nod. "All is well now," he said softly. The goat quieted down, munching away, and the yam let out a final huff. Within a minute, the backroom was calm. Only the enchanted fufu remained perfectly in its place on the table, a bit of soup spilled around it. Ruki managed a tiny grin. Even in chaos, that magical meal stayed ever full. He wiped up the spilled soup with a rag. Water dripped from the counter where coffee had splashed, and old currency notes lay strewn about, but everything that had been flying or yelling was now settled. Ruki realized he had been holding his breath, and finally let it out. He peeked through the curtain to the front. A few curious onlookers were still gathered outside, trying to see what was happening. Thinking fast, Ruki grabbed a dusty old transistor radio from the front shelf, a normal one, and held it up for them to see. He gave the onlookers a sheepish smile. "Sorry everyone, my radio here went crazy and made a mess," he called out. He waved the old transistor radio in the air, showing them the coffee splatters on his shirt and the papers on the floor. The market people looked at each other and then burst into laughter, buying the simple explanation. A security guard who had strolled over grinned and said, "Better get a new radio, my friend." Ruki chuckled and nodded. "Yes, sir, I will," he replied. The small crowd dispersed, still chattering and laughing as they went back to their own business. The crisis was averted. The magical mayhem had been contained just in time, and no one outside the shop was any the wiser. Once the coast was clear, Ruki slumped against the shelf, trembling with relief. He couldn't believe it was over, and that he had managed to keep the shop's secrets safe. One by one, the items gave little signs of gratitude. The radio emitted a gentle jingle before going quiet, and the thermos rattled softly as if sighing. Even the mirror was still, reflecting only Ruki's own tired, smiling face. Madame Kofo arrived moments later, having sensed the commotion from down the lane. She surveyed the room, a wet floor, some old currency notes strewn about, and all the once rowdy items now quiet. Then she looked at Ruki and broke into a proud grin. "You handled it, my dear," she said, resting a hand on his shoulder. Ruki managed a tired laugh. "Ma, it was nearly a disaster. I thought I'd expose everything, but you didn't," she replied warmly. "You used both your head and your heart. That's exactly what this job needs." She chuckled softly. "I did say you'd have some interesting days, didn't I?" She reached into the pocket of her wrapper and brought out a small object on a cord, pressing it into Ruki's hand. It was a simple charm, a tiny tortoise carved from smooth ebony wood, with two little cowrie shells for eyes. Madame Kofo gently looped the cord around Ruki's neck so the charm rested against his chest. "This tortoise charm is for confidence and protection," she said. "The tortoise may be slow, but it carries its home safely. Let it remind you that you have the calm and cleverness to handle whatever comes." Emotion swelled in Ruki's chest. He closed his fingers around the charm. "Thank you, Ma," he said sincerely. He could feel a warm reassurance from the little tortoise already. Together they closed up the shop, pulling down the corrugated metal shutters as dusk settled over the market. The regular vendors were finishing up for the day, and a cooler evening breeze drifted through the now quiet lanes. Ruki noticed a few familiar faces watching them lock up. The banker from earlier gave a little wave, and the market woman who had grabbed some of the flying money winked at Ruki mischievously. For their part, those onlookers kindly kept the day's oddities to themselves. Ruki smiled and nodded at them. As he and Madame Kofo walked home along the winding road, Ruki felt exhausted but happy. The street lights were flickering on, and the air smelled of fried plantain and cooling pavement. Lagos nightlife was stirring, but the day's adventures were finally done. Ruki fingered the tortoise charm and looked back at the closed store one last time. In the dim evening light, it looked like any ordinary little shop, but he knew the extraordinary secrets hidden inside. He also knew that a bit of that magic lived in him now too, in his newfound confidence and in the friendship he had with the shop's enchanted items. Everyday life in Lagos went on as usual around them, horns honking in the distance, laughter from a nearby food vendor. But Ruki walked with a new spring in his step. As if in agreement, a faint tune drifted out from behind the closed shutters of Madame Kofo's shop. The magical radio was playing a gentle song about clear skies and bright tomorrows. Ruki chuckled and stepped livelier, eager for whatever wonders the next day might bring.